Wenda, you run an animal sanctuary yourself, of course, but you do have concerns about some of the sanctuaries, don't you, and how they're run?
Well, to say I have concerns makes me sound very pious and a goody-goody. I think what concerns me more than anything is that we started this sanctuary, Hugletts Wood, 27 years ago, coming up to our 27th year now. And at that time, there were a handful of farm animal sanctuaries. Now, 30 years later almost, you haven't got enough feet or haven't got enough toes or fingers to even count the number of sanctuaries that are popping up in the UK. To me, I judge society through the number of sanctuaries that we have here. And I think that the more sanctuaries that we have, it tells me that society is failing animals. It's not just dogs and cats, it's farmed animals, it's exotics, it's wild animals. And I would have thought when we started 27 years ago, we looked at it as doing something that was needed at the time. We didn't for a minute think that the abuse of animals would grow so much that sanctuaries would pop up all over the place. What does concern me is many of the sanctuaries are started by people who haven't thought it through. They start up, they take as many animals as they can pop into the sanctuary. And the sad thing is, society in general judges the wellness of a sanctuary by the number of animals that it hosts. It's a silly idea, because it should actually look at how the animals at a sanctuary are kept, not how many they can pile up. There is a trend that says sanctuaries are so important in society now that we can't be without sanctuaries. My feeling is society should be such that there is no need for sanctuaries. I would be so happy to wake up tomorrow and suddenly discover that animals are free again. A sanctuary is not the ideal place for animals. Once again, we're creating a make-do to combat the failings of society in regard to the freedom, the liberation, and the well-being of all animals, not just dogs and cats, but animals who are farmed that shouldn't be in a situation where they're curtailed in fields. They should, in reality, be free to wander. But I look at a lot of things that pop up on my Facebook, and for some reason I seem to get appeals and posts from other sanctuaries. And maybe it's just because we have always done things differently, I guess. We have always felt that the two of us have responsibility, financial, moral, physical, whatever, for every animal or bird that comes our way, which means that we have always said the two of us somehow have to fund the very basics of their maintenance. So if something dreadful happened in society and people suddenly stopped donating to us, we're not going to be posting like fury, you have to help us, we can't feed our animals, or, oh my goodness, winter's coming again, we haven't got enough hay. Because my thinking is, winter comes every year. So you have to be prepared. But this is why I say so many places hit me as if they're not prepared, as if they've not thought it through. And they have the responsibility of tens, if not hundreds of animals. And I have grave concern about that, because I'll see a post that says, oh, we can't feed them anymore. If you don't give us money, we're going to have to start killing them. That's not a sanctuary. And I think I mentioned to you a number of times that I have concerns about this, that there seems to be no structure in some places. And to my way of thinking, the animals have to be protected. Call yourself a sanctuary, it means that they're safe. Not only safe if people are paying money to you every month, but safe in the case of an emergency of funds drying up.
I mean, that would mean that if someone was to start a sanctuary, they'd really need to have, really quite a lot of funds already, wouldn't they, in the first place, and not be relying on funds coming in from other people to keep them going. So that would be the first thing, to kind of have that money there first.
I think it's so many people we speak to say, oh, it's our dream to run a sanctuary. And I always say to them, live first and then prepare. You need to, I mean, with us, I sold my home. Fortunately, it was worth quite a lot of money, and all the funds from the home went into land purchase and creating infrastructure. And once that ran out, then we had to start creating a work plan to bring in funds. We actually ran for the first 15 years without any support. And then as the number of animals grew, we had to ask for people to make donations. And people actually asked on open day, how can we support you? You're doing so much here. What do you need? What help do you need? Do you need financial help? Do you need us to give you things, like feed for the animals, whatever? And it went from there. A sanctuary isn't a business, but it needs to be set up as if it's a business. You have to have backup plans. You have to have an idea of costs. You have to know how many animals your piece of land is going to be able to accommodate. You can't just pile animals onto a piece of land and expect the land not to suffer and the animals not to suffer. So I think with the best will in the world, it's the most wonderful dream. I dreamt of this when I was a 7-year-old child, when I was up in a lorry body watching calves that I had liberated as a child, being sent off for market, because that was my punishment. And that was my dream. And I waited 20 odd years, just to be able to start it. And I realized that it wasn't just a dream. It had to be a very, very practical thing. And to that end, we laid plans. We have backup plans. If I die tomorrow, what happens? If Matthew dies tomorrow, what happens? If we both die tomorrow, what happens? And the animals are all covered. And I think people need to be more serious about starting sanctuaries. There are some absolutely amazing people out there who are setting up sanctuaries and doing the most wonderful work. My concern is they have no foundation. So God forbid, if anything happened to them or anything went wrong, what would happen to the animals?
So your foundation was really the work that you and Matthew did to earn money. In other words, you were earning a wage from work you did.
Yep.
Was then used to pay for the running of the sanctuary. That's how you did it, rather than rely on
exactly.
Donation.
I was doing accounts for people in the evenings. Once the animals had all been fed and cared for and bedded down for the night, or if it was summertime, that they were safe and out in the fields and resting, then I would take work that I could do, say, from 7 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I did that every day of the week. And Matthew would take time off in the day because he's a traditional woodsman, and he would make woodland products, gates, fencing, traditional woodland products, besom brooms, hurdles, you name it. And we would sell all these things. And we were able to, as I said, for probably about the first 15 years, we were able to fund ourselves. I would do shows as well. And even now, as I said, we're about 27 years in, and even now, we bring in probably 60% of our running costs. Our running costs are anything between 1,200 a week and 2,000, depending on the cost of fodder, of hay and straw, which last year doubled and trebled. This year it's cheap again. We believe in transparency, which means that we tell all our supporters what things cost. We don't double and quadruple the cost of things and say, oh, it's going to cost us £50 if it costs us 20. It's paid off for us. But there are, excuse me, there are times that I've seen a post where somebody's saying, hay's costing us £50 a bale. And I can't help but cringe when I hear things like that, because I know that there is nowhere in this country at the moment where hay can cost £50 a bale. I think it when people do that, it sort of coats us all with a negative film, that we're maybe not to be trusted, that things really don't cost what we're saying. I also think it's the only, for want of a better word, industry where people are in charge of vulnerable beings, and there is nothing, no government body, not that I'm in favor of government bodies, but there is no jurisdiction, no overseeing of how things are done, which means in effect that somebody with no knowledge at all can be put in charge of caring for the most vulnerable of creatures and not know what they're doing. It's a very troubling thing, that, and I think often the recourse to failure to care is euthanasia, and it's not always necessary. I mean, to not be able to look after somebody or something and then take recourse to killing is unforgivable. Absolutely, it's not sanctuary. We are not perfect, but we try. If we don't know something, we make sure we find out about it, and we don't put ourselves in a situation where we're trying to care for someone but not knowing what we're doing. It's a tricky one, and it's not knocking anyone. It's just my thoughts are only with animals. People who know me know I care very little for the human race. They joke, even my son jokes with me that I don't know about things to do with his children, but if they were calves, I would know everything, and he'd have to beat me off them with a stick. That is me, and now I've reached the age I am, I don't care. I used to be embarrassed when I was in my 30s. I used to feel uncomfortable in my 40s because I thought there was something wrong with me. But now I don't care. It's me. It's how I am.
It's the other people that have got the problem, isn't it? Not you.
Yeah. It's people who don't understand me. But I'm not being critical of anyone who wants to help an animal. But what I'm saying is, think it through, think for their benefit, create a sanctuary that is for them. And I also think sanctuaries now are becoming more like businesses, and they're for the benefit of visitors. There's so many sanctuaries are open all the time, which means their residents don't get a break from the human race at all. Call yourself a visitor centre then, because sanctuary in my mind conjures up this wonderful idyll where animals are free to be, and the only people who have to be with them are those who serve them and care for them, who feed them, who call the vet when necessary, who are with them when they're preparing to die. It's a sanctuary for the animals then. A visitor centre is animals that are there for the human race to come and look at 365 days a year. And there is a difference, and it's very similar to places that have an input, a throughput of animals. They call themselves a sanctuary, but they might be a sanctuary for some who stay there all the time, but they're a rehoming centre. And I think it would be much nicer to define the fact they rehome, which means the animals are transient. There's a throughput of them. And then as a sideline call themselves a sanctuary, which in my book I might be completely wrong. I might be absolutely doolally in my head. But a sanctuary is a place of permanence, of safety, of security for animals that need that place, not for those that are fit to be rehomed and put with a family. And especially where farm animals are concerned, you can't rehome a cow or a sheep or a pig so easily, because people need a lot of documentation. There's a lot of legislation that covers the caring of them. And I just think, there should be something in place that people have to adhere to when they're setting up sanctuaries, that maybe there should be guidelines. I think we should be accountable as well. I think when we say, yes, we've got 2,000 animals on our sanctuary, that we account for who they are and what they are. We could never have 2,000 animals here because the land wouldn't take it. But we keep the animals that we have here, and I think there are probably around 400 now. That's including the little ones, the birds, but they're mainly large. But I think there should be something in place to help people set up. I think there should be something in place to help people give the best to the animals in their care. Excuse me. And I do think that there should be some form, I hate to say legislation because we should be free of that, but there has to be something, guidelines for people who are running sanctuaries, that they have to adhere to certain things for the benefit of the animals.
Yeah, because of course there is a kind of historical aspect to it. Because as you said earlier, there seem to be more and more sanctuaries now for farmed animals. But I remember way back in the day, going back to when I first began kind of campaigning for animal liberation way back in the 70s, that sanctuaries for farmed animals were incredibly rare. I'm not even sure any really existed. And you were dealing with places that were kind of, another word that could be used is rescues, really. Places that, they'll keep some animals permanently and others they'll rehome. And these rescues were really almost entirely just for dogs and cats. But the same problem kind of really existed in those days, that people would kind of set these places up on a whim, without having the proper financial resources, but also without having the proper amount of help to do it. Because I think a lot of them, and this still goes on today, of course, fail to realise how much work it is, how much it can take out of someone, both physically and psychologically.
Yes.
To be having to constantly care for what can end up being a large number of animals. And so I think a lot of these cases that you get where, the RSPCA went into a house and, removed, so many animals that were in appalling conditions and found the bodies of all these dead, emaciated, dead cats and dogs and all that. I often think that and then someone gets arrested and charged with cruelty or whatever. I often think that those people started with the best of intentions.
Of course they did.
They started with the best of intentions, think, I kind of love animals, I want to rescue dogs and cats. They started with the best of intentions, but they didn't have the resources, either financially, psychologically, or in terms of actual help, physical help, to do it. And so they completely get out of their depth, and they don't know when to say no. They're constantly because it's a thing that kind of can run on emotion, isn't it? It's a very emotional thing. I love animals, I want to care for them, or I want to
take everyone,
as many as I can and take as many, and that one's going to be put to sleep if I don't take that animal. I'm going to take that animal. And of course, in the end, that can just run and run till it's out of control. The animals end up suffering. There's an appalling situation. So I don't think although these people may be prosecuted for they don't technically call it cruelty, do they? But I think they can be looked at as being cruel people. But I don't think that
they're not.
They're not. I think they're just people that have kind of, got out of their depth, and then they've gone. It's affected them mentally, because they can easily tip over, can't you? In that situation.
They get to the point where they shut down.
Yeah.
They can't cope with it, and I think the cruelest thing is. I don't feel the same about productive farmers, I must admit.
No, that's.
I think if they're found abusing animals, they should be prosecuted and stopped from farming them. But I think with people like the little lady down the road, say, for example, who started off with 3 dogs and then suddenly somebody reported her for having 40 dogs and 500 cats in the house. And when the authorities go in, they find there are some dead in that room and some dead in that room. I think those people don't need to be prosecuted as such. They need help. They need to have some of the animals rehomed. But can you imagine taking every animal away from that person who has tried so hard, albeit wrongly or without thought, but to find themselves without animals and to have an order on them that forbids them for keeping animals for life. The kindest thing would be for people to go in and say, right, I think you're a bit overwhelmed here. This really isn't good that the animals are in this situation, but we know where you're coming from. We see what you tried to do. It wasn't done with malice. It wasn't done for any reason other than you were overwhelmed. And I think in those situations, people should really be helped. They should be monitored so they don't start again.
Yes.
But leave them with 2 dogs or 3 cats or whatever, because they're still capable of caring.
Yes.
It's just the pressure has been taken away from them. They'll be no longer overwhelmed. It could be chance for the authorities to rehome, but this is where the authorities fall down. They don't take and hold and rehome. They euthanize.
Yes.
So they come in. I mean, the RSPCA, and I shouldn't berate them, but they really leave me cold because they're great at euthanizing everything. Very, very quick. I know 3 or 4 instances where they've euthanized animals when they didn't need to. And once again, this is another thing where sanctuaries, rescues, rehoming places, visitor centres are all a mirror of what is really wrong with society.
Yes.
And the fact that we are euthanizing animals, that more and more sanctuaries are having to pop up. What is wrong with this world? That we're having to set up so many places and hear of so many animals being killed unnecessarily, and society just doesn't change.
Yeah.
I think I think that this is what really troubles me, in that people are setting up sanctuaries thinking they found the answer. They haven't got plans. They haven't got the right mentality. They create farms without slaughter, which means that little regard is given to the animals because people take precedence over animals, because people bring money in. Therefore, people have to have visitors 24/7 to make sure that the funds are there to keep the sanctuary going. With a little thought, it could have been that, yes, they have 1 day a week throughout the year where they have visitors if they must. And the animals have a certain degree of peace and quiet. You don't find cows with hordes of people around them every day of their lives. They might see one person on a bridleway with a dog that should be on a lead, and they'll look up and they'll become protective of their young. And this leads to another instance where cattle who trample people with dogs who are not on leads, or people who have dogs near cows. I mean, why do it? You know, the poor cows have nowhere to call their own, and their land, their field is encroached by a dog, which is a natural predator to them, and a human who's nervous because the cows are looking at them and they're behaving erratically. And then people say, well, why did the cows trample that person to death? Because they're defending what little tiny bit of territory they have. So, you know, if you look at cows, if you look at any animals, they're inquisitive, but they're not necessarily in need of human company.
No.
And I think sanctuaries have to think of this. All animals are entitled to their own peace and quiet, their own domain. And yes, we have 4 open days a year maximum. And our big cows love it when they have visitors. And they will react nicely to visitors because it's fun. It's not every day. It's not mundane. It's not encroaching on their lives. And you can see them. They will go up to visitors. They will, you know, welcome them. But I tell you what, at the end of every open day, when we've done the 4th or 5th cow walk, they're looking at each other as if to say, "Oh God, I hope this is the last one." and you know, some places don't give them a break. We give them at least a month's break in between these days.
But they don't come from creatures that interacted with humans. You know, all these animals come from wild ancestors, don't they? I mean, I think cows isn't the auroch was the ancestor of the cows, and then you've got they all have wild ancestors. Now, how often would they come into contact with humans?
Only if they were being hunted.
I mean, unfortunately, when they're being hunted, but that really kind of wasn't very often, was it? You know, and so it kind of really isn't natural in the sense that to be constantly surrounded by humans, is it? And I think in you know, ideally they'd be in the wild, and whether they interacted with humans would be their choice. In other words, if they saw a human and thought, I'll go up to that human and get a stroke or something, it would be the choice of the animal rather than the human to impose themselves on that. Well, that would be the ideal situation. Of course, we're a long way away from that. But I think this kind of goes in a sense to kind of the root of the problem that lies underneath all of it. Like, however someone runs a sanctuary or a rescue, you know, some have run very well, some have run poorly. There's people that get out of their depth, all these things we've discussed.
And people are greedy.
Yeah, that's right. People that think that they can use it as a money maker, and that's something we can talk a little bit more about later, probably. But what has caused that situation in the first place? You see, there wouldn't be this kind of sanctuaries wouldn't exist if there weren't animals that were in need of rescue. And animals wouldn't be in need of rescue if humans didn't behave towards animals in the appalling way that they do. In terms of, like, you know, there'd be no sanctuaries for farmed animals if people didn't eat animals.
Exactly.
Would there? And there'd be no sanctuaries for dogs and cats if people didn't, you know, want to have a dog or a cat in their home for entirely selfish reasons.
Exactly.
You see, you know, the thing is that, like, with, for instance, with dogs, I mean, all dogs are wolves. Dogs came from the wolf.
Exactly.
And it's kind of, you know, there's some debate about how that happened. I mean, it's many hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, that somehow wolves began to live with people, whether that was people, you know, forcibly taking them from the wild, or it's often said that wolves kind of cozied up beside humans because they thought, I can have a bit of food off there.
Exactly,
you know,
that's right.
Well, even if that was the case, and there's nothing wrong with that, if, you know, wolves
if it's their choice,
come into the cave or wherever and kind of, great, that's their choice. But what then happened was how humans behaved then, in that they took these wolves, selectively bred them into dogs, but they were selectively bred for the purpose of subjugating other animals. Because all the different breeds of dogs that you have
different characteristics.
They're all bred in all shapes and sizes, right from, you know, the great, you know, the real big ones down to little tiny terriers and ones like that. They're all bred to oppress other animals in some way. They're either as herders or hunters or you know, dogs that would chase, dogs that would kind of retrieve, dogs that would go down a hole and kill an animal like a fox or a badger. They were all selectively bred for the oppression of other animals by humans, and that was what was wrong. Nothing wrong with wolves coming in and snuggling down and then going off and being a friend, but just leave them, let them do that. But that isn't what happened, and that's the problem with dogs and cats. I think that cats that people have in their homes are native to they're not native to the UK, and there's people probably be listening to this from all over the world. But, you know, the cat, you know, what's referred to as this kind of domestic cat, I think they originated in the Near East. Don't know whether that's Turkey and that kind of area, what they call the Near East. And they lived in quite arid conditions. And of course, when people started trading and traveling around the world, they
bring them with them.
Bring the cats with them, and that's how the cats are spread. But they're not a native. I mean, this is why, you know, there's such a problem with cats predating on wildlife. because they're not a native. Cats aren't really a native animal to this country. And although we've had cats for hundreds of years, in sort of evolutionary terms, that's no time at all. No. And so yeah, and they're kind of, it hasn't been so easy to alter cats for some reason. They don't, you've got all these dogs in all shapes and sizes. All right, the cats have been bred so that they're kind of, you get some naked cats, and they've been able to do a little bit with the selective breeding of them. But for some reason, they don't lend themselves so easily to be, processed into all these shapes and sizes. But you've got a problem with both those animals, and then with others such as rabbits and the whole lot of them, hamsters, gerbils, rats, all of these animals that are used by humans as so-called pets for the delectation of humans, which isn't done for the good of the animals. I'm going to buy my little Tommy a guinea pig that little Tommy's going to be interested in for about 5 minutes, and then the guinea pig will spend the rest of their life out in some dirty hutch, freezing outside. This is what happens so many times, that they're brought to just titillate, a child or whatever.
And the awful thing is it's sanctuaries. Even we here get asked to rehome certain animals that are not farm animals. Hence the reason we've got so many cats here. We take the cats that are classed as not rehomable because they have a little quirk or two, which is fine by us. We can deal with their quirks. We can allow them to be as they should be. The problem is people do not take responsibility for what they call companion animals. I don't think the cats or dogs choose to be companions, but people choose the animals to be companions. And when they're going to move to a new home, they don't think of taking them. They choose to do things that doesn't include the animals in their family. And then they look to dump them on sanctuaries. And we don't get so many dogs offered to us. But we get any number of hens. Some of the excuses I've heard for people wanting to get rid of pet pigs is ridiculous. There was one lady in particular who had taken a male pig, a boar, piglet, and raised him in her home. And she had a daughter and a husband. And she phoned me and told me that we had to take this young boar now because he was attacking her husband. Now, the thing is, they raised him in a home where he had 2 girls, her and her daughter. The man, the husband in the family, in his mind, is encroaching on his girls. And when I said to her, there's no need to rehome him, just get an animal behaviorist and work with him in this ultra strange environment you've put him in.
Or alternatively, get rid of the husband.
Exactly. Well, my sentiments. But I thought that might not go down too well.
No.
But I mean, a pig is much better to have around the house.
Better manners, probably cleaner.
But it's society itself is temporary. It's full of self-indulgence. It's full of people wanting to satisfy their needs and desires, not so much physically or sexually, but it's emotional. They have to have something small and sweet, and the minute it grows and shows its personality and becomes what it really is. A sheep can be quite dominant if it's allowed to be, and that's natural. If it's a male, it has to find its place within the flock. But it might not go down well when it's in your drawing room and it won't let you sit on the settee, or won't let you sit on the settee. It's we have a responsibility, and I think also this comes back to sanctuaries being flooded with unwanted pets in inverted commas that shouldn't be pets. We get calls from people who have raised a calf, and because it's now 1.5 and it's asserting itself or himself or herself, they can't deal with it. And it's a very simple process to work through. They don't want the responsibility when the niceness finishes. And I think Sanctuaries really should be quite firm about this. I spend hours talking people through the fact they have, I use the old adage, which is, a dog is not just for Christmas. Well, a calf or a cow is not just for when it's a calf. You have a lifelong responsibility to that animal. Therefore, find yourself a piece of land, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, muck him or her out, feed her, water her, see that everything's okay, then go to work. And the number of people who say, oh, I couldn't do that. I really couldn't do that. No, it's all beyond me now. But it wasn't beyond you when it was little and lovable.
No, well, they don't think about it, because it's this decadence in society. I mean, our society is decadent in so very many ways.
It is.
And this is, part of the decadence, that people just want whatever they, think they can have, whatever they want. And it doesn't matter about the price that's paid for that.
No.
By
it's entertainment,
both by animals, and the animals, of course, that suffer because of this pay the highest price, but also by the people that are caring and are responsible, and who have to spend their lives picking up the pieces. And you see, I think that kind of that in a sense, well, not in a sense. I mean, they actually are. I mean, sanctuaries are band-aids, aren't they? The refugees.
Yeah, it's true.
Now, the reason that we have refugees, where we have human refugees, is because of some crisis that's been called, usually because of war. And so, but if you don't want, the solution to human refugees is, well, stop being idiots and fighting wars all the time. Do you know what I mean? And then that's solved the refugee problem, hasn't it? You know what I mean? And it's kind of the same with, the issue of sanctuaries being, refugee centres struggling to care for all these animals. The solution of that is to stop that problem arising in the first place.
Exactly.
And once again, as I say all the time, we're back to vegan education.
Yeah, definitely.
Because vegan education, you educate people, first of all, not to consume animal products. And if people don't consume animal products, well, that's the end of the whole problem of, sanctuaries for farmed animals, because those animals aren't going to be they're not going to be bred in the first place in huge numbers, are they? To be slaughtered, and then there's a fallout of some of them that end up at sanctuaries. And the second thing is because veganism isn't just a diet, it's a philosophy of animal liberation, that people who adhere to that philosophy, they're not going to want animals like cats and dogs and rabbits, etc., deliberately bred to satisfy, the desires of humans. That isn't going to happen. We're not going to have that situation, because, of course, the fallout from that is that so many of these animals end up dead, don't they? End up euthanized, put to sleep, whatever, because there aren't enough homes available, because there's an excessive number being bred. And I think there's, I'm all for people taking in rescued animals from a rescue, but don't buy. Is that?
Oh no. This is
that's slogans that don't breed or buy while stray dogs die. In other words, it's the breeders that are creating this problem, and people going to those breeders, and instead of going to rescues, giving money to the breeders, encouraging that.
I've heard from two friends recently, both very much dog people, very decent people, nice homes, high walls in their garden, and both were turned down by rescues on the home checks. And they were absolutely devastated. They felt as if they couldn't, or they weren't worthwhile. And as luck had it, both of them were able to find dogs that had been bred by people they knew who weren't charging money for the puppies. So they were able to take a dog each. But this is another thing. I mean, I don't know much about dog rescue or cat rescue. I don't know anything about rehoming. Nothing, because I would never rehome an animal in my life. When they come here, they're our responsibility until the minute they pop their clogs. And And that's the way we as a couple under the sanctuary function here. It doesn't mean it's the right way. It doesn't mean that rehoming is wrong. Obviously, you can't rehome cows and sheep and pigs. I really think that's a tricky path to follow. We've picked up the pieces from 2 rehomings of cows in the last 3 years, where they've been given out to a family with land. Something has happened. The family, in one case, the calves grew up, and the family couldn't cope with them. They got to terrible twos where the bullocks are like adolescent delinquents, and one just has to be incredibly firm, not harsh, not cruel, but firm, and they know and they learn how to behave within their herd. And of course the other herd members are treating them the same way that we would have to make sure that they are kept not in control, not under control, but kept to a point where they're free to demonstrate their juvenile lifestyle, but they can't do any harm to other herd members or us. But in a home where a middle-aged couple are trying to look after 3 delinquent bull calves, it's not fun for them, and it can be quite frightening. And sadly, in one case, the sanctuary who rehomed them refused to take them back. In another case, the sanctuary who rehomed them, another group of younger cattle, said they'd take them back, but even though they'd bonded as a group, 3 of them, they wouldn't rehome them together. They would have to go wherever they could rehome them. I don't like stuff like that, because cows bond. All animals bond with whoever they grow with, and to break that bond, I think, is exceptionally cruel. But it's a question, I think, of laying down some thought for the animals, where people who've taken too many animals are not forever moaning about not having help. Why take more than you can manage yourself? I don't understand it. I mean, Matthew and I do everything the 2 of us can do here. We said from day one, we will only take as many animals as the 2 of us can care for, because we've seen firsthand that having a lot of help, especially with handicaps, we have a number of handicapped animals here, it doesn't work for them. New faces all the time, things chopping and changing. They need continuity. So we said that we will never be a massive sanctuary. We don't want to be the biggest or the best. We want to give the best care for our residents, and we want to have something that isn't at risk of being undermined because we can't get the help. I don't want to be posting on Facebook, I can't continue because I can't do the work myself. We haven't got enough help to look after everyone. That's ludicrous. That means that you've taken too many animals. It's a silly way of doing things. And once again, I know one situation we were asked to help, and it cost us thousands to prepare to bail a certain person out. And in the end, we were just told, forget it. And we'd used a lot of our savings to get everything ready to take the animals that this certain person couldn't care for, a sanctuary runner. And it just showed us then how fragile situations can be for the animals. It's very, very difficult. We used money that could have been used for the betterment of conditions for other animals here, just so that we could help out, just so that we could offer a home for life, and free up the pressure on this person. It's just another aspect of sometimes the way people feel that they're so good to do this, and when things get tough, that they feel such self-pity. I find that troubling. I find it very troubling, and it's the opposite side of the coin to all the people who think we're saints and we're wonderful for running sanctuaries. We're the lucky ones. We are the ones who are so blessed to be able to live a simple life, to live caring. How many people in this world want to just care for animals? And here we are, all of us who run sanctuaries, all of us who are balancing how we do things. We're not saints, we're not superheroes, we're not angels, we're just ordinary people who are doing what we know we should be doing or what we can be doing. It's almost as if society is in need of idolizing people in lots of aspects, especially in the vegan world. And I say vegan rather than animal rights or animal liberationist world. It's almost as if vegans have to create heroes, people to look up to, and there is really no reason to idolize. And I think when this happens so much in some sanctuaries, it makes them feel superior, that they're wonderful. And so many people are saying, oh, you're amazing, you're doing this. Oh, you've given up your life. They didn't have to. Nobody held a gun to their head and said, oh, you have to give up everything in your life. In fact, not many of them do. They still manage to have holidays and they still manage to live a normal life.
Yes, and this is another thing I think to discuss as well. But I think there's a lot of emotion involved, isn't there? And I think emotion can overwhelm reason. In other words, that people feel they want to, people care genuinely about animals, and they want to, they see this whole sea of oppression of other animals, slaughter of other animals, suffering. They kind of want to do something about it in terms of rescue, in terms of setting up a sanctuary, and kind of that sort of straight away, that's an emotional response. Because if you looked at the rational response, the absolutely kind of hard-nosed rational response to it, that we have got this massive problem of the oppression of other animals, and we have 50,000 animals in the world every second slaughtered, for food, and there's thousands. If we talk about animals like dogs and cats, there's thousands every year are put to sleep because there aren't homes available, and it goes on and on and on and on. And so, kind of like the really hard-nosed rational response to that is vegan education, because that solves the problem at the root. That goes to the very root of the problem, right? Because that is it's human supremacism and the fundamental idea that humans are superior to other animals. This is false, irrational, immoral idea that humans are somehow superior to other sentient animals, and we can use them for our own purposes. That is the problem. That's the thing we have to end, or we have to end it in enough people so we're in charge, and then the ones that don't agree with it, there's nothing they can do about it. They have to toe the line, and that's where we need to go.
Exactly.
That's the absolutely rational response to it all, is to get involved in vegan education, because that is the root of the problem, right?
Very true.
But a lot of people kind of somehow kind of can't do that, because I think that's a very kind of, in a sense, that's like, in a way, kind of putting emotion aside and analysing the situation. Some people are more, people are drawn, more to kind of rescue, aren't they? Because emotionally, they have this huge emotional pull. That they want to deal with this kind of the short-term symptoms of the underlying problem, don't they? And they want to get into rescue. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's great that there are people kind of rescuing these animals. They're doing something. They're doing,
of course.
They're trying to help in what way they can. It's like kind of, it's like this, going back to the situation about wars and refugee camps. The kind of the ultimate solution to the problem of refugees is to kind of
stop the war,
change the political system, isn't it?
It is.
So we no longer have so we no longer have wars. We no longer have that kind of this acquisitional tendency in humans, so there are wars, and then you have no wars and you have no more refugees. So campaigning to end war is the way that you ultimately, deal with refugee crisis. That doesn't mean it's wrong for people to set up refugee centres. It's the same thing.
It's a short-term answer, and
short-term answer. Yeah.
And one would expect that some refugee centres are set up, but if one were to see millions of refugee centres set up, then the worry is that the problem is not being addressed.
Yes, I think this is the thing. I think there's a word that I think is a very, very important word, and the word is unless. But no matter what people want to do in terms of helping other animals, whether those people want to set up sanctuaries, whether those people want to set up, I don't know, vegan cafes or whatever they want to do in terms of helping other animals, to kind of, to sort of lessen the effects of the oppression that humans carry out on other animals. All of those things are praiseworthy.
They are, most definitely.
But unless we have enough people doing vegan education,
it's pointless. It's just going to...
We will never, ever
change.
solve the problem.
No.
So it's unless. It's not that it's wrong to, there's anything wrong about doing a sanctuary or any of these things. These are all praiseworthy activities, and these all have, and many, so many animals owe their lives to people like that. Unless we have enough vegan outreach, we are not ever going to get ourselves out of this hole.
No, it's very true.
So it's unless do all that, if that's where you're drawn to, but unless enough people do the vegan outreach, then we are never going to have a world where animals are properly treated by other animals, are properly treated by humans, and that's with it. But kind of like going back to the thing about it being an emotional thing, is the thing of what's happened, that people are driven by emotion when they kind of go into rescue. And so they will make decisions that aren't the best decisions. They'll kind of rush into a thing without fully evaluating really what needs to be done. And I think this is why there are these, where people kind of say, well, I'm going to set up a sanctuary and then worry about other things later. Worry about where the money's going to come from later, and then they end up making desperate pleas because they've done it totally on an emotional pull.
And the thing is, it's not beneficial. As I said before, my concern is only for the animals. It's not to criticize humans who've taken that giant step and set up sanctuaries. I must be honest, I do question sometimes why people set up sanctuaries, whether they feel that it's, as you say, praiseworthy. It is praiseworthy, but it's hard work. It's a huge responsibility. If you take us, for example, we have lifelong responsibility for so many animals. And every time we're asked to take somebody, I have to sit and do the sums, and I have to work out, if our donations dry up tomorrow, can we still maintain them? Can we give them everything they need? If they needed surgery, could we be in a position where we have savings put aside to cover a large operation? If a building fell down, what would we do? I have to look at all the practical aspects of everything. And so when I see sanctuaries who have been talking about how many different animals they've been taking, when I see that they're pleading for money, or they're going to have to start killing some of the older animals, that mortifies me, because that's not responsibility. That's not being a responsible carer. It's expecting Joe Public to bail you out.
Is that used as emotional blackmail, though?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I've seen it 2 or 3 times where people have said they're shutting down, and suddenly people are, oh no, you can't do that. You've got so many animals. Let us give you £20,000, £30,000, and then they're not spending it on the basics for the animals. It's all new equipment or all new this and new that, which isn't needed more than once a year and can be hired if necessary. And then once again, 6 months later, we've got this problem, we've got that problem, we've got something else. It is really giving sanctuaries a very, very bad press, in that we're probably all tarred with the same brush, in that when we ask for help with something, last year when we had a cow killed, we had rented more land nearby here for a group of animals that we've brought over. And sadly, we trusted a farmer who killed one of our cows. And the police were hopeless. Everybody was hopeless, in fact. And the only people who were decent was the vet and where we had the post-mortem carried out. And we wanted to bring them home. I couldn't sleep thinking that I'd made a total cock-up and put them somewhere where they weren't safe. So the most important thing was to get them back as quickly as possible, which we did. But for winter, we needed to build an extension to one of the barns. And we ran an appeal. And it wasn't an appeal like some places would run where they wanted everything paid for. We just wanted help with the unexpected cost of materials. We do all the work ourselves. I mean, we're late middle age, we're approaching old, but we still do the work ourselves. And we're not goody-goodies. We're just average bods. Average bears. We just do what we can.
Yeah.
But to our way of thinking, if we could have got the help, which we did get, for materials, and we are physically capable, yes, it does kill me 17 feet up a ladder with a huge piece of wood, but I do it, and I do it for the cows. I'm not good on heights, and I'm shaking and nauseous, but I'm up there because I know it's got to be done, and there's no way that I'm going to hit any of our supporters for money to do any more than is necessary.
Yeah.
But, I think very carefully now about everything that maybe we could appeal for help with, because I do not want to appear like certain places where they are constantly hitting their supporters for money that they're not putting in the kitty themselves. And nobody can tell me that they're working too hard, that they don't have time, because these places are not like us. There are 2 of us here, and we still find time to do things. We still find time to get everything done, and these people just don't seem to be able to hack it. But it's not good for everybody else. My concern is for the new sanctuaries, where they're coming into a situation where it's gone from sanctuary and supportive sanctuaries to big business, where it's the sanctuary with the biggest mouth and the one that can spin the biggest yarns who gets the funding.
Yeah. See, one thing that concerns me, and it's something other people have said to me and expressed their concerns, that you get, there's certain sanctuaries or rescues that are making, appeals for money for the animals, and then you see the people that are running those sanctuaries, like posting pictures on Facebook of them having a holiday in the Bahamas, or and you think, well, look, kind of, does that kind of really add up? Isn't that money that really should have been spent on the animals? I mean, not again opposed to people having holidays. Of course, everyone needs a break.
Everyone needs a break,
especially people running a sanctuary if they're under pressure. But to have to go to the other side of the world, or to go, way out somewhere, Thailand or somewhere like that, where the massively expensive, is that really what those people should be doing?
Well, the thing is, even if they paid for those holidays themselves, wouldn't you think they'd put the money in the kitty? If they're asking people, and this is my my stupidity, but everything we have we don't have a lot, and we don't need a lot. And I'm not asking for pity from anyone else, but our belief is we put in everything we can ourselves. And then if other people are putting in as well, everything's fine. You know, it's nearly balanced. But I go some years, well, I haven't been for 2 years now, to India to work with cows. Everything is, and my flight is paid for by charities over there, cow charities. And I give talks to people about cow care because, believe it or not, India is failing seriously in cow care now, with their mechanized slaughterhouses and everything else. And I go to villages and I talk to people about basic cow care, you know, to take a cow into your home and look after her, and all the religious benefits and blah, blah, blah. And it really hits them coming from a Westerner who does it herself. But I take maybe 3 weeks a year, and it's hard slog, and I'm exhausted when I come back from being over there because I sleep in the back of a car being driven around villages, and I get one night in a hotel in Mumbai before I fly back. And really, that's only so that I can have 3 baths in a day because I'm paranoid about bringing disease back here to the cows here. And the hotel will launder my clothes for me. I will stay in a bath until I'm all wrinkly and looking like a big sponge. Um, but you know, I would never dream of leaving here and using the money I have to spend any more than is really needed on a little break. But I know it's each to their own, and I know everybody's different. But I just think if we're asking people to support us in any sanctuary, we have to show willing. We have to make some changes to our own lives. We have to cut back on our own lives. And by demonstrating that we're genuine, I think we get slightly more better hearing from the supporters. And in this day and age where support is now spread very thin, the more sanctuaries that come along, the more support is needed across the board. And there's no increase in funding. It's the same funding that's always been available, the same donations from the same people, that is spread more thinly on the ground. And I think that is more reason why we ourselves, people who run sanctuaries, people who serve the animals, have to demonstrate their willingness to live gently and simply. And it's no hardship. You know, we're the lucky ones. We're the ones who wake up in the morning and are with the animals. We go to bed at night and we've been with the animals all day. That is something wonderful. It's not a hardship. But we have to play fair.
Yes, yeah. Because there's been some contention as well about, you know, there are certain people that put on vegan fairs, vegan festivals to raise money for sanctuaries. And because obviously they say they're raising money for sanctuaries, there's been some dispute about how much is for sanctuaries, how much is for themselves. You know, that's been said. I don't know.
No, I don't.
And the difficulty there is that in order to make money out of the event, they will charge a high price to stall holders, and it prices out the more grassroots organisations. They will charge high prices to get in, which prices out the non-vegans. So the vegan festival kind of becomes unfit for purpose, because to me, the purpose of a vegan fair, a vegan festival, is to educate non-vegans to go vegan. So if you're charging a high entry price, they're not going to come. And so there's I know there's been concern within the vegan movement about that, in that it's kind of sort of changed the it's changed the whole the way that vegan fairs operate to a large extent, in that these used to be grassroots events that were run as non-profit.
Exactly.
And so they'd be £1 to get in.
Yeah.
Remember, like the London Vegan Festival, the West Midlands Vegan Festival, I think they were £1 to get in. The London one might have been free. And then there's all these other ones that, I mean,
the West Midlands,
thanks to Kevin White, who did organise the vegan fairs kind of around the Midlands area. Most of them were free to get in, non-profits. And affordable for grassroots organisations, right? And for quite some while that was the general. That's kind of how vegan fairs started, and then you got people using them, saying, "Well, I'm going to use this vegan fair to make money for myself, or maybe to make money for a sanctuary that I run." And so, therefore, the whole kind of aspect of vegan fairs changed into being, instead of like ones where grassroots groups could afford to be, and where non-vegans could be attracted because it's free to get in or very, very cheap. Those two things went the other way.
Yeah.
And so that's been, and that, there have been people running sanctuaries that have been involved in changing the, this whole kind of aspect of vegan fairs to being things that aren't really how they used to be, and have kind of
I've taken
lesson there.
Yeah.
The counter argument would be maybe that, well, those fair, if those people weren't doing those fairs to make money, then those fairs wouldn't happen in the first place. So there is that argument.
Yeah, but I've taken stalls at some of those where they've been run by organisers who are raising funds for one sanctuary or another, and my only criticism would be that if they don't seem to promote them.
No,
they don't seem to put time or effort into good promotion. I did one in Newcastle many years ago, and I stood there like a complete dweeb along with probably 50 other stallholders, and maybe 10 people came to the event. And sorry,
I was just going to say, they're making money out of stallholders.
Exactly, and it's not cheap. It's there's a great little fair that's just started in Brighton, and they contacted us because we're the local sanctuary, and they said, "We'll give you a stall for free. Would you like to come?" And I said, "Yes, please." COVID aside, face mask on, I'm going to be there. And it was a very pleasant day. I did the first one. And I think the next one is January the 23rd. But it was a pleasant day. We weren't rushed off our feet. We didn't take a massive amount of money, but from it came 2 families who wanted to sponsor animals. So we told them to present themselves for being chosen. They don't choose the animals here; the animals choose them. And it's worked out very well. And we had a good enough day to make it very worthwhile. The distance we travelled was negligible. It's 30 miles. And they had promoted as much as they could. I believe the second one that they did, that I couldn't go to because I was elsewhere, they had promoted very well, and there was a better turnout before Christmas.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking when you have to pay nigh on £100 in advance, well in advance in some cases, to get a stall where the promotion of it has not been perfect. There's a duty. I think anybody organising anything, whether it's for proceeds of the show to go to a sanctuary, the fair to go to a sanctuary, there's a duty of care that if you're taking people's money and offering them something, you have to have done the groundwork, you have to have done the promotion, you have to give them something.
Yeah, I think if the idea though is to cram a load of stalls in there and charge them as much as they can, and £100, exactly. I think it's probably kind of quite cheap for what stalls are these days at others. Then what they're doing is relying on the money from the stalls, and so because that means you have to charge more for the stalls, it prices out grassroots.
It does.
And the other thing is, they're not, and also by charging to go in, they think, well, we don't need to get so many people going in because they're all going to have to pay £6 to get in or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was properly promoted, then you could maybe charge a smaller amount on the door, and be able to, and because more people would come, and then the stallholders could be charged less, and the you get more non-vegans. I mean, this is really kind of the principle on which the West Midlands Vegan Festival operated.
It was so
because there was massive promotion on like Kevin used to do terrific work on social media promoting it, and then he would
you'd all go up,
very often in person. I mean, where we he did a couple of fairs he's done over the past few years in our one of our local towns in Kidderminster, and on both occasions our vegan group delivered the best part of 10,000 leaflets locally. We door dropped, and both they were packed. The fairs were packed.
They were fantastic
because that groundwork was done. The door drop and the leaflet delivery, but for a load of these fairs, there's really none of that.
No,
there's maybe a tiny little bit on like social media, and that's it. And the thing is, what's happening there is the golden opportunities being wasted to educate people to go vegan. Because what you want is a load of non-vegans to come to these fairs because it's cheap or free to get in, right? But they're not going to come to that fair if they don't know it's there. They don't know that it's going on. And if you've charged so much to go in, because these are people that are just curious, they're not really going to pay £5 or £6 to satisfy their curiosity. They might pay £1, and so they become kind of unfit for purpose in a sense, in that way. And I'd say that, like, if people want to raise money for a sanctuary through doing a fair,
find a way of doing
it. Or if they want to raise money for themselves because they want to spend their time organising vegan fairs instead of
running the sanctuary,
going to some or having some shit job, I'm not really against that. But look, what you do is, put a big load of resources into promotion, and get these places packed, and get them packed with non-vegans, and maybe charge them a very small amount to get in, right? And you make your money that way instead of charging storeholders a fortune and charging a load of money to get in, which is going to kind of cut down your attendance, and then not doing the promotion.
Definitely.
And that's that's kind of touching on animal sanctuary, because there are people who do that.
I think that we all have a duty to spread the word in however we can, and I know we've got a reputation for welcoming non-vegans on open days. People will email and say they'd like to book tickets for such and such an open day. Could they bring their meat-eating uncle and aunt with them? And our response is, of course, they're more than welcome. Bring them. We won't preach at them, and we don't preach. We just have everything vegan as if it's quite natural. We tell the stories of the animals when we're out in the field with them, the cows. And I would say that for every open day, we get 1 or 2 permanent converts to veganism. And the fact that they see the animals in the flesh, that they're big and beautiful, that they hear an occasional story. They'll say, oh, how did he come here? Or how did they come here? And you can always tell the non-vegans because of the leather shoes, and the cows gather around the shoes and they groom them. And that is the most perfect opener. And because people will say, oh, look, they're licking my shoes. And I'll say, yes, they're grooming another animal.
Yes. Yeah, well, yes, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, do you think they know? Yes, of course they do, because it's leather and they groom each other. But don't worry, they won't hurt you. And you can see the mind suddenly going, oh, my goodness, they know that it's leather on my feet. And then they'll ask for the story of certain animals. And I don't make the stories gory. But I know we've had grown men who are non-vegan break down in tears in the field because it suddenly hit them about the reality of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No. The bizarre thought just occurred to me in that you wouldn't want to wear bamboo socks to visit a panda sanctuary, would you?
Definitely not.
And definitely not bamboo underpants.
Definitely. No, that's a definite no. but just going back to the sanctuary, and I sound like a griping old girl, and I'm not. But my worry is the animals. It's, as I've said 2 or 3 times, it's not a poke at anyone in particular. It's having done this for 27 years, I see the pitfalls. I see how things are changing. I see how the animals in some cases lose out to the benefit of things being done for the benefit of humans. And sanctuaries are for animals. Sanctuaries are to take the chosen few, and that's all it is. In the bigger picture, there's not even 1% of animals slaughtered in this country in sanctuaries. Do you know that?
No.
It is just so ridiculous when you break it down. But to use the old adage, it means a lot to the animals who are saved, and it means a lot to us, and that's why we do it. But we can't sit back on our laurels. We can't start sanctuaries because people will think we're wonderful. We have to start sanctuaries to show how animals should and could live. We have to allow the animals to show themselves to people. People have to see the reality. And we also, as you always say, we have to find a way to educate. And only a sanctuary really is second best to education. And if we can combine the two of them, all well and good. But they're not the answer. Sanctuaries are not the answer. They're masking the reality of the situation, and they're making people feel good for doing nothing, really. As I said, there are gazillions of animals who are slaughtered every day, and we have nigh on 100 cows here, which is not even a drop in the ocean. And I think in total, all the sanctuaries in the UK will probably only have 1,500 cows in them, maximum. What is that? In the bigger picture, what is that? So we really have to do our best for whoever comes to us, sanctuaries in general. We have to be humble. We can't think we're wonderful because people tell us we're wonderful. We can't see the funds coming in as the means of bettering our lives. Why should we have a better life? We've got the best life anyway, serving the animals, caring for them, living simply. Yes, it's a worry. Yes, we take the responsibility. But nobody's holding a gun to our heads. And if it's too much for somebody, rather than complain on social media, get out of it. Stop doing it. Admit that you made a complete cock up. You took on too much. Sanctuaries will rally round and help, I'm sure, if you just find it all too much and you want to give up. But it can't be at the cost of the animals. We can't run sanctuaries using animals for our betterment. And we can't pretend we're good people when really our ulterior motives are not for the animals. And it's human society. Cross-section of human society, not everybody will have the best interests. But we have to accept sanctuaries should be for the benefit of the animals and not for the people running them.
When do you think there's more that sanctuaries could do to promote veganism? And if so, how do you think they should go about it?
I think every sanctuary has a duty to tell the general public, or to share with the general public, the story of why they have farmed animals, especially, are the greatest means of promoting veganism to people who aren't vegan. We always adopt a gentle approach here. I tend to shy away from slaughterhouse animal snuff movies that pop up on my social media. I can't take it. I know the reality. I know the truth. I've known it for many, many years. And I think some people can take it and some people shy away from it, and they shut down because they don't want to know. Whereas words are much easier to listen to than graphic images. And I think shows are good opportunities where you're talking to someone who really isn't vegan, who isn't sure but wants to know. And I think I always find, as I've said before, a gentle approach. Like they'll say something and I'll answer, and I'll answer with seeds that will cause them to come back and ask more questions. I like to create an atmosphere where people are leading me by asking me and I can answer them. And I think no matter what a sanctuary is doing with regard to promoting themselves socially, either shows or open days or whatever, they can have information available. They can talk to people about the history of the animals. They can give people information to take away with them. I think sanctuaries more than anything have the best opportunity to preach, for want of a better word, but in such a way that people don't realize that they're imbibing the information about veganism. It's very, very important that people don't feel they're being spoken down to. We had a very, very lovely situation about 3 years ago where two daughters who were very obviously vegan bought their father and mother. The mother was vegetarian, the father was an out and out meat eater. But he came along because they booked him a ticket, and it was a family outing. And I know he came to the pop-up cafe and he said, could he have coffee with ordinary milk? And the lady serving him is so clever. She's so sweet. And she said, yes, would you like hemp milk, soya milk? Would you like almond milk or barista? And he said, no, just ordinary milk, please. And she said, well, those are the milks we have here. And he said, I want cow's milk. And she said, we don't have cow's milk here, but we have all these. And he said, oh, I'll just have it black. Well, one of the daughters was very embarrassed. And anyway, he came out to the field to see the cows. And he sat down with one of the younger bullocks and he asked for his story, which was an incredibly sad story. And I told him, and then I said to him, are you comfortable if I just go off and talk to other people? I'll keep an eye on you. He said, oh, yes. And at the end of the walk, he was still with this bullock. And I had to go back and get him and pull him out. And I thought no more of it. And I didn't hear anything from the cafe to say he'd asked for meat and something. So it was only, could I have a meat sandwich, please? Just ordinary meat. But his daughter contacted me I think about 3 or 4 weeks after, and she said, you won't believe this. She said, Dad went vegan that day, and he's been vegan ever since. And then last Christmas, the one just gone now, she sent a photograph of them having Christmas lunch with, I think is it tofurkey? We don't have replacement meats. But yeah, she said, look, Dad's eating it. He's still vegan. So 2.5 years and he's still vegan. And I think that was down to the fact we gave him the facts. He sat out with one of the cows and nobody was hostile to him when he asked for ordinary milk. You know, we tend to just let people be and just underhandedly preach. But it's for every sanctuary to do this. You know, what is the point of saving animals from slaughter, of caring for them for life and doing no more? There really is no point. We have to reach out. If we can't save more animals, then we have to make sure that people learn and are taught and are educated. Even if we plant a seed and nothing happens for a few years, we've planted that seed. And you know, some seeds will nurture and grow, some will lay dormant for a while, and with some nothing will happen, but it's worth a try. It's just worth a try. So I would say, and every sanctuary is different. You know, some sanctuaries have their own permanent cafes there. Yes, they can have information with the wonderful vegan food and make sure the people they know who are vegan, let them know if they're bringing non-vegans so they can have a little more gentle attention. It's
put them in the cooler.
That's it. but it's I think a normal approach rather than a hostile approach. When I was young, I was very angry and very hostile and very determined. And as I've sort of almost matured, I've developed this approach that is just, well, you know, veganism is normal. It's what do you want to know about it? and we just talk gently, and it works. For us it works, but for other sanctuaries there are so many different ways. You know, you can have days where it's meet the animals or something like that, and you can put on a host of wonderful vegan food and drink and give information, you know, as you always say to me, information that people can take with them that is not in your face, but it's subversive and it's gentle. And once you've got them reading a little bit that doesn't offend them too much, you can very gently lead them by the nose onto the facts. And by that time, they'll be so immersed in the information, hopefully, that they'll carry on reading. And I think if we do this, rather than become angry young men or either angry young people, then I think we reach a lot more. But anger's needed. I'm not decrying anger. Anger and fury and aggression are needed at times. But in the majority of times when you're dealing with the public and the non-vegan public, I think subversive action really pays off. So, you know, you're planting seeds and you're just working on them, but they don't realize that, and they're just information gathering.
Yeah.
But I do maintain, we as sanctuaries all over the country, we have a duty to preach in a gentle way.
Yeah. No. I mean, I agree totally. And it is a good way of educating people. And it's a shame if sanctuaries don't take full opportunity to do that.
I mean, that said, Ronnie, sorry to interrupt you, but that said, some sanctuaries have pig roasts.
Well, I've known. I mean, our local dog rescue. I mean, it would be bizarre if a sanctuary for farmed animals had a pig roast, especially if it's a pig sanctuary. I would hope that doesn't happen.
That was partially farmed animals that did have pig roasts.
I mean, that's just like...
It's stopped now.
I mean, that's like a sanctuary for refugees inviting cannibals in to kind of eat one of them, isn't it?
It's horrendous.
But our local dog rescue, some years ago, was going to have a pig roast, but they had to cancel it in the end because one of them, their most important rehomers, was vegan. And she said, right, I'll go and do it for another sanctuary if you have the pig roast. And so they didn't. And so she managed to stop it because she was too valuable. Had she not had that, they'd have carried on. I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, our local RSPCA has fish and chip nights to raise money for
dog rescues.
Dog and cat rescue. I mean, it kind of is bizarre. So I'm going to set up a fish rescue, and I'm going to have I'm going to have dog and cat burgers to raise money for my fishing. I mean, it's no more bizarre, is it? It's no more bizarre.
It isn't. People just are very strange. They don't. I know we did a cats protection show once. We were invited, as we'd taken some of their cats, to have a stall, and they put our stall right opposite the pig roast they had, and Matt actually left. He couldn't stand it. He said, "I'm going to leave you here. I'm just going to check everybody's okay at the sanctuary."
I know it's totally...
What?
Well, I know, and I mean, it's kind of incongruous, really. I mean, we did a stall for our kind of, when we had a kind of county vegan and veggie group that I was involved with some years ago. We did a stall at the Blue Cross Open Day, and we were there, promoting veganism at our stall. Meanwhile, there was a burger van.
Oh no!
Right. There was a stall from the local zoo.
Oh.
And the second prize in the raffle was a day at Wolverhampton races.
No.
So there we are, several grades of like, the oppression of other animals. And it's like there for animal rescue. I mean, it was like, it's kind of mind-boggling how people don't join the dots. But I think what you kind of can do at those events is with the ordinary public, because a lot of the ordinary public that go to those events are kind of what you might call dog and cat lovers, so to speak. They care about some animals, so that care for some animals, then you can show them how that can and should be extended to other animals, and you can give them Animal Aid produced a very good leaflet, for instance, why love one but eat the other.
Exactly.
Well, the picture on the front is of a puppy and a piglet, and it's kind of on that theme, and that's very good to give to people, along with other vegan information. That's what we do, because at least you've got something with people you can work on, even though they're totally inconsistent. They'll go there and go and buy a pork bat from the pork bat man. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And
it just does.
I mean, it is like it does. It is kind of how people kind of are like that. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? But that's the world we live in, isn't it? I mean, our world is totally full of inconsistencies.
When I was little, my father used to say to me, there are some animals who are pets. There are some that you hunt. There are some that you keep for food. And then there's your gun dog, because he was a hunter. And his gun dog was special, ultra special, because she retrieved all the things he'd shot. And I know when she died, he was distraught. A big, tough, strong man who must have taken the life of goodness knows how many animals over his lifetime. And he actually cried for her. Yeah.
But it's bizarre, isn't it? But then people are like that all the time,
Horrendous.
I mean, you could say people were like that in the days of slavery, that they're kind of, a white person was for, being privileged, and a black person was for, like, just working for you. And, it's the same, it's very much the same kind of mindset, isn't it? And we've got to just educate people to, and find ways. I think you always start where somebody already is. In other words, if somebody cares about dogs, you say, right, okay, you care about dogs. Well, look, what's the difference really between a dog and a pig or a sheep or even a fish, in terms of their, that they feel things.
Do you think it's because they don't come into contact with farm animals?
I guess it's partly that, but I think it's just conditioning. I think it's how children are brought up right from year dot or day dot, isn't it? Right from the beginning, they're born into a human supremacist society that kind of treats certain objects as certain animals as objects, as things to be used or to be eaten, and other animals. But you see, even the other animals in a kind of sense are objects. I mean, like a dog or a cat in a home, they're an object really for the delectation of the humans. The reason they're there is really entirely selfish reasons. Although, unless they're rescued, unless the person says, I'm going to take that animal on, for the benefit, the prime benefit. Yes, I mean, we all get joy from rescued animals we have, but the main reason we have them isn't that. The main reason we have them is for their benefit, to save them from suffering and being killed, isn't it? And to give them, to enable them to live a life, and that's the main thing. But where most people have animals in their homes, that the main purpose is for their own benefit, not that of the animal. But bonds can develop, and there can be, true fondness for these animals, through getting to know them, getting to know their all individual personalities. What people don't realise is that all other animals have individual personalities, whether that animal's a cow or a goat or a chicken. I mean, I've got a friend of mine who used to run a sanctuary for hens, and she had hundreds of hens, and she knew every single hen. They all look the same to me.
No, they're all.
And I said, that hen there, who's that hen? And she'd say who the hen was, and the whole history of where the hen came from, any ailments the hen had, what her personality was, and they all look the same to me, because because she was familiar with them. Every day she worked with them, she knew every single one, and they're all the same. They're all like Rhode Island Reds or whatever. They're all same. But and they're all different, and but people, because, and I think yes, it is partly because people don't know them, because people do know the dogs and cats in the home, particularly dogs. I think people can be weird with cats. People can go, oh, that's just the cat, and just ignore the cat. Cat goes in and out, and the cat is like not really.
But they're not demanding. Cats are
not looked at. People don't take the time to get to know what cats are tremendous. I mean, our cats are all different.
They're wonderful.
They've all got their own personalities. They're all wonderful. But it takes a little bit more to kind of get to know a cat, because the cat isn't up on you and all over you. No, you know, they're kind of, and I kind of like that about cats. I like the slight standoffish for cats. That kind of appeals to me. You know,
you have to earn their
respect. They're all, but they're affectionate. They're all different. But I think a lot of people don't really get to know their cat. The cat is just this creature that's just there, goes in and out, and one cat's the same as another cat, but they're not. You know, and so there is that difference between dogs and cats in how people are with them. And then even more so with other animals that they don't know at all, and they don't realise that all these animals are individuals and all have their own personalities and are all persons. They're all persons. Any sentient animal is actually a person. It's that is the definition of personhood to me.
And the individuals,
they're self-aware and they're all
absolutely.
And this is the message we have to get across to people, you know, through vegan education, so that people, because once people start
to see
thinking of animals differently, once they start having proper respect and consideration for animals in their own life and become vegan in terms of that they're not going to eat animal products and they're not going to patronise anywhere where animals are oppressed, then also hopefully, and I think in most cases that it will happen, those people are going to behave different politically, they're going to vote differently, and we may get, in the end, some politicians that are going to pass legislation that will properly protect other animals and will promote veganism. And so it's not just about changing people's diet, it's not about changing their lifestyle, it's also changing the way they think and behave politically, and then that creates system change.
So important.
So vegan education is fundamental to all those things. Wenda, going back to something you said earlier, it's about what you put in place for when you and Matt can no longer run the sanctuary, because obviously that's very important, isn't it? And it's also very important for other people to, you know, to take those measures.
I think the most important thing is that when Matthew and I started the sanctuary, we wanted it to continue beyond us. I don't know if it will, but what we've done is we've put in place arrangements for both scenarios. One where both of us pop off at the same time, and the other one if I die before Matthew, because the most important thing is if I pop off, because I do a lot of the fundraising and a lot of the work that brings in the money, Matthew would need temporarily to have a bridge so that while he's missing me so much, he can pay the bills, and then he'll be able to continue. If he dies before me, the life insurance that he has will come to me, and I'll have a holiday. No, I'm joking. What I'll be able to do is to, because he does a lot of the heavy physical labor, we both share the work together. But he will drive the vehicles. He will dig out the barns when they need digging out. He'll build the walls and make me mix up. But he does a lot of the physical work, and I would need to have someone here who can actually do that. I can't rely on a volunteer, because volunteers don't have to come all the time. So we worked it out that there would be enough from his life insurance for me to, for quite a period of time, be able to pay someone to come in and do the work that needs doing. It's not perfect, but it means that we continue. Now, if we were both to die at the same time, then we've got 2 lots of life insurance. We've also got another policy that comes into play, which means that the cows and the other animals and the birds at the sanctuary would be looked after. If somebody would come forward at that time and take over the sanctuary, then the money will be there for them, providing they're the right person, of course, would be there for them to run the sanctuary and keep it going. The land, which is held in my name at the moment on behalf of the animals, would convert immediately to the animals. So it would mean that nobody would come here and get the benefit of owning the title to the land because it's theirs. It belongs to everybody who's living here, not Matthew, not me, but them. So that would be held in trust for them, and it wouldn't go to any human being. If at the end of the time we didn't have anyone to take over from us, then it's written in both wills that whatever money is there, and there should be more than enough, providing we don't have too many youngsters like under a year old who are going to live 20 years. But it would keep everybody going here. It would pay for them to be cared for, looked after. It would pay for medicine, feed, foot trimming, whatever they need until they die. And at such time, we've written in that if nobody has taken over the sanctuary, then it will be sold. And the proceeds of that sale will go to a number of little groups around the world whose work we believe in. So either way, it means we have a chance of continuing the sanctuary if there's just one of us left. If both of us die at the same time, or both of us die and there's nobody to take over, then the animals are quite safe. They'll be able to live here for the rest of their natural lives. And then the sale of the sanctuary will benefit a number of places whose work is absolutely incredible.
Because, of course, a very important thing is that there would be, if neither of you were around anymore, that there'd be someone who was, had the right abilities to carry on caring for the animals.
We have a person who will step in. He's only in his 30s. He's vegan. He has worked a lot of time with the animals, not our animals here, but animals in general. He has more than indicated that he would be willing to look after the animals. He's not so sure that he would want to take on the responsibility of a sanctuary. It might be that people would come forward and say, look, let's form a committee and just keep Hugletts going until all the animals are gone. Not taking in any more, or maybe taking in a few. I don't know, but we can't. The sad, well, being a control freak, the sad thing is we can't set the future in stone. It has to flow. So as long as, my main concern is that every animal that is with us and every bird that is with us, should we die, say we both die together, every one of them will be safe for the rest of their natural life. That is our duty. That is paramount to us. That those we know, those we serve, those we care for now are safe. What we would really like is for Hugletts in itself to continue. It doesn't need us to continue. It's an entity in its own right. It's the residents. It's not us. Our job is to fund it, to make it work, and to leave it in a position where it can carry forward if people are willing to carry it forward, on the understanding, of course, that by taking it forward, they have no benefits from the land because the land belongs to the residents. And it sounds very mean, but I don't intend to put the animals in a situation where somebody will run it for so long and think they'll put the land on the market and make the residents homeless.
And it's possible to do that legally?
Yes, it took a long time. We had to create a trust that comes into play. In fact, it has to, because I hold the deeds of the land because it was my home that bought the land. I hold it with a proviso that the land is held for the animals. And on my demise, so it says, that a trust that I've set up will come into play and manage the land for the animals, giving Matthew every right of enjoyment and something or other, I can't remember the other word, in for the rest of his life, providing he cares for the animals. So I'm a mean old toad even with him. But he knew when we first agreed that we were going to, well, he was going to come and join me doing what I was doing, that it would always be for the animals, and that there would be no benefits other than having me at his side for the rest of his natural life, and caring for the animals. But what I wanted to do was make sure that they are 101% safe.
But that means there's trustees. We have a trust. There's trustees.
Yeah.
And is that like a firm of solicitors, or are they other individual people?
I have two individuals who I've known for the best part of my life. One of them is my son, who is very loyal to the fact he thinks I'm a complete nutter doing what I do, and always reminds me that when I was normal, when he was very young, although he used to come and bail me out from the police station. So really, he's talking rubbish, but his stock phrase is, when you were normal. That is just him. But he has a great understanding. He runs companies himself, so he's no idiot. And although he wouldn't dream of getting his hands dirty, if we said take a pitchfork and muck out, he would look at us as if we were crazy, and probably go onto his phone and try and find somebody to do the job for him. But I trust him, and he's only a little younger than I am, but hopefully he's got a good few years more than I have. And the other is a friend that I have known for donkey's years, and she, once again, she's probably about 20 years younger than I am. So hopefully, I'm hedging my bets here, and they're both nominated as trustees when I pop off. And I try to avoid solicitors and accountants because they don't do anything for nothing. And I know both Eden and Sue will. And nothing will be taken away from the animals. There'll be no charges for anything they do, which is really important.
Yeah, that's because it concerns me that I mean, you've got all these, what sound like excellent measures in place.
Well, we tried.
In all the eventualities.
Anything.
And it does worry me that not everyone who runs a sanctuary does that. They kind of don't think about the future. And there's been cases where sanctuaries have closed suddenly, and there's been this desperate efforts taken to move the animals out to other places and all that. I mean, I've known that happen several times, and obviously, in those cases, the people running the sanctuary probably hadn't thought about what's going to happen when they can no longer run it, or they pass away, or something else happens.
I think it's often the case when sanctuaries are run on rented land, when the rental agreement is with a specific person, which obviously terminates on their death. I tend to think ahead. I think of every eventuality. I really am quite a wild person for myself. But when it comes to something like the animals or someone like the animals that I have responsibility for, I tend to be extra serious and extra caring. If it were just me, I wouldn't give a jot. I wouldn't even write a will. I'd just say, fight over it. I don't care. But for them, it is so important. So very, very important. And I think, I guess I flatter myself in that I've always thought Matt would be a tiny bit upset if anything happened to me, and he might not function perfectly, which is why I wanted to make sure that everything will come into play quite quickly and quite easily if I die. Not that I'm planning to, but they say only the good die young.
Yes, well, that's it's excellent to hear that, and I think it's very important that people obviously consider the future as well as the present, isn't it?
I think that's why earlier on I said we should really set up sanctuaries as a business. So just the setting up should be regarded as a business. So there's a plan for how the sanctuary runs, how it's funded, what happens in various situations, and also taking into account that people plan for their demise. It's going to happen. It's probably the only thing that we're all certain of, that one day we're going to pop off. And we have to take into account, unless we really don't care, what's going to happen to the residents of our individual sanctuaries. We have to make sure that if we're not around, they're taken care of. And I think it's essential, absolutely essential, that we do that, their lives have to be secure. They have no control over their lives. Even in sanctuaries, they can only choose who their friends are. They can only choose who they want to be with. They can't arrange their futures. We have to put things in place to make sure they have a future for as long as they're alive.
Final thing, Wenda, is I'd like to ask you really is, if someone was considering setting up a sanctuary for other animals, what message or advice would you give them?
I would say, live your life first. I always say to young people who say, "Oh, we want to start a sanctuary, it's our dream," and my stock phrase is, do everything you want to do before you start a sanctuary, because it's a full-time responsibility. And you can't just pick it up and put it down. You can't just entrust the care of all your charges to somebody else, because you don't know that somebody else is capable of taking the responsibility and caring. The most important thing, I cringe when I see people set up sanctuaries on rented land, because it's not permanent. I would even say to people, delay until you have enough money behind you or enough support behind you to be able to purchase even a small plot of land, because you can use the small plot of land to secure other land as you go along. But the most important thing is permanence. You can't have 100 animals on a piece of rented land that you could be given 2 months' notice to get off of. I constantly see people appealing for help to get more land because their lease is up, the people don't want to renew, and often is the case with horses. People rent land and then they've got 50 horses and nowhere to go. I don't advocate using accountants or any other professional people, really, because it's just money down the drain. But everybody can do some sums. Everybody can get information on running costs, on how many animals a piece of land will maintain, and that is without causing any problems to the land. Land is living, grass is living, and if you put hundreds of animals on one patch of grass, then your grass doesn't last long, and it takes a full year for it to grow back. So in that time, you've got to find somewhere for your animals to go. So just very simple things. Ask yourself a number of times, is this for me? Is it a dream? Can I cope with getting up 24 hours a day, like 2 o'clock in the morning if somebody's unwell? Can I get up early in the morning in summer? Because everybody wakes up at sunrise. Everybody goes to sleep when it's dark. So summer, you can have really long days. Work out whether you are going to have to be dependent on volunteers. Work out whether it's something, as Matthew and I have done, you choose to have only the number of animals that the number of you can look after. I would go as far as to make up a sort of business plan so that all your expenses are there. Have you looked at all the legislation governing sanctuaries and farm animals? Because the legislation is very intense. There are a lot of rules and regulations, minimum requirements that the government lay down for space for each of the farm animals, how you transport them, how you move them, what are the regulations on downtime. When you bring pigs onto a holding, you can't have any other animals coming on or off for 21 days. Things like that. what you have to do to comply with legislation when you're thinking of taking farm animals. It's not so difficult, providing you follow a path that crosses the T's and dots the I's. And I think the most important thing, especially with the farm animal sanctuary, is for some obscure reason, it seems that the government departments treat us more cruelly and more officiously than they do farmers. It's almost as if we're some subversive group who are out to trash farming. Well, we are, but they're not meant to know that. They're not meant to think of us like that. But they do have a very strange way of making things very, very difficult, like sudden visits to catch you on the hop. Be aware that you're not going to suddenly do as they do in the States, and that's cut out ear tags, because you can be prosecuted and fined £1,000 a tag. So, you've got to mix dreams with practicality. You've got to say, yes, this is what I want to do. It's a wonderful dream. I really want to do this, but I'm aware of all the practical aspects as well, because that will keep you out of trouble. And the time is coming now where there are more and more regulations put down for farm animals who are not farmed. And life is becoming a bit tougher if you don't adhere to it. If you've got a personality like mine, then you'll keep bucking away and pushing and seeing how far you can go without getting into trouble. But to be quite honest, it's not worth it. Better keep your nose clean. I'm trying to grow out of that trait, but it's not easy. I just like to push. But without being me, life can be very simple and very easy when it comes to regulations. And it just is one of those things that has to be addressed. And then accept the fact that the minute you take your first animal, your life is no longer your own. That you are going to be the richest person in the world with all the wonderful creatures that are going to be cared for by you. And the years will fly by. And not to knock yourself out if you can't help someone. But what we're doing now is, because we are absolutely chock-a-block, when people contact us for homes, I'm contacting other sanctuaries that I trust, that I would be happy to go to if I were a cow or a sheep or a pig, and asking for help, because we can't actually supply a place for animals doesn't mean that we can't find them a place. So I would just say, think very, very hard. Be prepared that your life is going to change a millionfold, and do it.